Hello everybody, my name is Ana Lúcia and I'm gonna talk about the results of some recent research on rhetoric and teaching. As most of you probably knows, Aristotelian rhetoric develops along three proofs. Ethos, basically orator's character, in our case teachers. Logos, rational construction, and pathos, emotion state of the audience rendered by the orator. As we see, the teacher's speech is built on rationally, the logos, and the teachers lets the students know of his character and his image, ethos. And here is the most difficult. The teacher must incite emotions and the desire to keep watching the class. Pathos. The conquering of the audience must not only be one conquered, it must be maintained. Pathos is particularly important in classroom because it can be and generally is the difference between a lively class and a class more on the dull, boring side. By all means, the teacher has to establish a relationship with the student for the class to progress. This is the goal. Now for the research. Persuasion of an audience is a process which follows a trail. Such trail is availability, identification, passion awakening, change of judgment, and action. We will go through each of these stages. Availability. The students goes to class. He or she basically wants to hear what the teacher has to say. Depending on the teacher's perceived character and on how the teacher presents what is seen in class, the student will feel more or less inclined to arguments the teacher has to construct. The teacher must know the audience. Audiences were not created equal. The teacher has to know beforehand as much as possible of psychological traits, values, and preferences. This is particularly difficult with multicultural audiences, since values and preferences may vary widely. Now for identification. The audience identifies in some measure its own values and preferences with the teachers. Availability and identification prepare the next and most difficult step, the awakening of passion. Awakening of passion. For any audience, and students as an audience are no different. The orator has to touch some emotional chord, evoke an emotion or desire, and sustain that throughout the duration of class. Good to remind that pathos is a wide array of feelings, not only tear-shedding emotions, but feelings that may be subtle enough as to remain unacknowledged by the person itself. Change of judgment. Since passion did appear, judgment, according to Aristotle, will change. The very understanding of a previous unknown subject qualifies as a change of judgment. Such changes are followed by kinds of emotion, as for example, pity, anger, fear, compassion, pleasure, or, if the speech was not good enough, boredom, tiredness, and here comes lack of will of keeping paying attention. So, passion awakening has to be carefully monitored by the teacher. Still change of judgment. Now, this is important. The speaker has to inspire confidence, and for that, the teacher must show virtue, prudence, and benevolence. Prudence, depending on what's being taught, may be interpreted as the knowledge of the teacher about what he is teaching. If one of those virtue, prudence, and benevolence is lacking, the audience can cease to be involved with the class. Lack of prudence can destroy the impression of fairness, and viciousness behavior can increase the distance between the orator and the audience. But the teacher, although prudent and honest, can be seen as lacking benevolence, thus being liable to fail to express the best intention. For example, if the teacher fails to explain something in a bad way after being asked so by a student. Another example is treating badly a student that wants his grade to be revised. Action. Action is the growing step, the most important. It represents some change of attitude by the audience. For the student, feeling more secure about the subject taught is already an action. The change of attitude for the better should be the permanent goal of any teacher. Here is a scheme that shows the trail of petals. Each stage is necessary, even though students or the teacher fail to perceive accurately what's going on. Aristotle, in one way or another, shows the last three steps, but the first two are necessary for the other three bloom. Another scheme, more detailed, shows that availability triggers memory, fantasy, and imagination, paving the road for identification to show up. This is accomplished by the teacher's ethos via narratives, discourse, language figures, and other resources. Likewise, change of judgment triggered deliberation, choice, and disposition that lead to action. An example which took place in a community college in Brazil is that assignment consisted of 3 tasks, all pertaining to the history of the town that houses the college and is home the most its students. The first task, linked to the past of the town, was an exhibit of vintage photographs, and the students were supposed to make a report on the exhibit. The teacher got the students to acquire interest in the history of the town. The second task, linked to the present of the town, was the writing and staging of a theater play featuring the saga of a local family. And the third task, linked to the future, would be to collect science fiction stories about the future of the town written by students of an elementary school. First task, vintage photograph exhibit. The teacher managed to get the students available to interest on the history of the college town. They become identified with it. The awakening of passion happened when the students started to draw real pleasure in the development of the task. The change of judgment consisted in having another look at the history of the town and the history itself as a body of knowledge. The action consisted in putting together the exhibit in a way to call attention upon the city history. The other two tasks were developed with the trail of passions in mind, and the teacher made sure that each and every step of the trail of passion was followed by both remnant tasks. Making a long story short, the play was staged in City Historical Theater with presence of a mayor, his head of education department, many aldermen. It was a huge success. Passion and emotion make classes flow and teaching, learning more pleasurable for both teacher and student. More than that, they are incredibly efficient in making students acquire competencies. The appearance of passion in students is not exactly a result of bursts of inspiration, but of awareness of the importance of using pathos in the classroom, hard work, and last but not by any means least, careful planning. Thank you very much.